How stupid are people, man? I told you I was cutting it close because today's Taco Wednesday. Realized we didn't have any lettuce. So I ran up to the store to get some lettuce and beer. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be right on time. And I go to the self checkout line, and it's all slow people, man. Like just slow fat people with kids and everything paying with the EBT card. So I'm waiting on you. Not only am I waiting on you, but I'm also paying for your groceries. It just,
What are they buying? I mean, are they buying like healthy,
well,
legit stuff, or are they buying like Cheeto Puffs and stuff? Big difference.
the family I saw that was going extremely slow. I mean, it seemed like normal groceries. Left his tears. Nice.
Joe called me out, one of our listeners. I was actually going to have his cup or use his cup last episode, and I totally forgot. So there you go, Joe. That's for you. Sorry.
The groceries, normal groceries, but she bought like, I don't know, maybe 7 things of Philadelphia cream cheese. It's like, man, what are you gonna do with all that cream cheese? Then the other guy was buying, like frozen chicken wings, and like he was buying good stuff, man, with the EBT. So good for him. And then the other lady was a nurse with like 3 kids. I don't think she was using EBT, but 2 out of the 3 in front of me were using EBT cards, man.
What should be the limits, or
what were fat?
What you can or can't buy with EBT cards?
I think the outside, Josh, what do you think? Outside of the store, outside aisles, or what do you say? The perimeter of the store? Anything on the perimeter of the store where everyone should be shopping anyway, that should be EBT. And maybe the cooking, baking aisle, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. So fruits, vegetables, meats,
dairy.
Liquor's on the outside of our grocery stores. So liquor.
No, absolutely no liquor, no tobacco, obviously. But yeah, man, outside of the store. And it definitely should be. I mean, I don't know how EBT works. Maybe I should go on it, but to figure out how much is, dude. I mean, how much they allotted a month?
Oh, dude, wasn't it Jameis Winston who was buying like snow crab legs or something like that off with his EBT card?
No, he stole those.
Or he's stealing. Oh. I have seen a lot of like posts though. I haven't seen them recently. I'll put it that way, but it seems like several years ago, around the Jameis Winston time, you would see all these people like, man, here's my EBT or food stamps or whatever they call it. And I mean, man, they're buying like T-bone steaks and shrimp. And I'm like, I don't have one of those cards, and I don't eat nearly as well as some of those folks appear to be eating.
Well, so the SNAP benefits, they vary by the number of people in your household. So, I mean, if you're a household of 1, right, and you fall below that poverty level and you qualify for SNAP, you get $292 a month. And then it goes all the way up to a family, a household size of 8 gets $1,756 a month. And then each additional person after that's $220. Yeah. So that's the breakdown.
And it varies by state, obviously, because some states will give you benefits in addition to that. But I don't. I mean, well, I'm seeing. I don't know what you looked up, Josh. I just typed it into Chat GPT. But yeah, basically $291. Yours was $292. While a household of 4 may receive up to $973 per month. $973. I mean, you could eat pretty well, family, if we could. Yeah. Even now with inflation. I mean, if we shop right, we could eat pretty well.
So that was for fiscal year 2025, and that's on the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities website.
Well, before we get into the DOGE and whether that'll be cut or not, the Department of Government Efficiency, which is awesome. So some dude on X today, Josh typed in something like, well, somebody was saying Pete Hegseth has no qualifications, not like General Austin. And Josh is like, oh, the guy who lost 2 wars, namely Afghanistan and Iraq. And some dude chimes in and goes, I don't see how you can say we lost those wars. I don't see how you could say we lost in Iraq. And we kind of went back and forth with not much, but just like, hey, we didn't win, we lost. We're the United States of effing America, man. If we don't win, we've lost. But I said, but it's a little more complicated than that. He's like, you can't give an answer. I said, well, my thing is, dude, I don't want to get into a debate on X. Okay, number one, well, I do have time, but I just don't want to right now. Is this too much? It's too much to type out. Nobody's going to read it. So I invited him to listen to this podcast, episode 169, and we'd cover it right up front. And he's like, if you're not going to answer it here, I'm definitely not listening to a podcast. But if he's not going to listen, it doesn't matter. But let's go over it one more time for the cheap sheets, starting with Josh. So Josh, Nate, and save Afghanistan for Roger. But Josh, why don't you outline for the audience your views on why we did not win, i.e. lost in Iraq as of 2024?
Man, I really wish we would have prepared for this, because this is all going to be off the cuff, even though we could do an entire episode just on this. Right. So when you take a look at Iraq and, kind of consolidating my thoughts here, we lost Iraq before. Prior to Iraq, Iran did not have, they didn't have a whole lot of allies surrounding them. Iraq is now nothing more than a proxy state for Iran. It is a vassal state for Iran. It is ran by the Shia. You have Shia militia groups now all over Iraq, the PMCs and everybody. You have now they've able to, they extended their, I want to say they have surrounded Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia and Iran, everybody knows that they're not friendly, never have been, really never, probably, I won't say never will be, but it's going to take a lot, just because they're diametrically opposed, being, Saudi being predominantly Sunni, Muslim, and then, Iran being predominantly Shia. And so you take a look at that. Now Saudi Arabia has to deal with Iraq and Iran. Prior to, they had to deal with Saddam. But again, Saddam was one of those dictators. He was a regional bully. He was not an existential threat. No matter how many people, say, weapons of mass destruction, he had them. He didn't. He did not have any weapons of mass destruction outside of what we already knew he had. He was not refining uranium. He didn't have the facilities, or he didn't have the capability to do that. There really wasn't any solid evidence that there were, foreign fighter training camps, Al-Qaeda training camps inside Iraq. But Saddam was a regional bully, and he would threaten his neighbors. They had big Iran-Iraq war in the 80s that lasted, how long did that last? Like 8 years or so? It lasted a while. And so now what do we have now? Expanded Iranian influence. Iran now effectively has their land bridge all the way to Lebanon, which they're able to, directly support with, funds and weapons, personnel, everything else to Lebanese Hezbollah. Right? They got their land bridge over to Lebanon. They've got their land bridge through Syria. Simply because Bashar al-Assad, he hates Israel more than he hates Iran, and so. And then we wasted how much blood and treasure in Iraq? How much did the Iraq war cost us? How many trillions? Because we put it on a credit card, right? And what did ousting Saddam? What did that lead to in 2014? It led to the rise of ISIS. And so not only do we have to turn around and watch that happen, but we had to go back, We had to go back and then deal with ISIS, which was a direct result of ousting Saddam. Saddam was a dictator. He was a brutal dictator, but the world needs dictators. That's just all there is to it. And we can't go change every regime that we don't like. George Bush got bullied into going to Iraq by Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld because they were leftovers from his dad's cabinet, and there was a job that his dad saw as unfinished from Desert Storm. So we don't have a footprint in Iraq. We don't have large bases in Iraq. We really can't use Iraq to stage attacks on anybody else in the Middle East that we may need to. The Iraqi government doesn't like us. They're not friendly to us by and large. So, yeah, what do we win in Iraq? We didn't win anything. All we did was waste a lot of blood and treasure. That's all we did. And we destabilized the Middle East for decades.
Defense contractors won.
Oh, hell yeah.
We were busy freeing the crap out of them. It's they created such a power vacuum over there. And it just goes back to like your worldview. And I think this is the difference between when you looked at the Barry years and the Biden years versus the Trump years, just, shortening up there for 12 years. Hey, man, not everybody's going to get along. And as we've mentioned many times on this episode, most of the world is pretty racist for one reason or another. And oh, by the way, not everybody's a first world country or a second world country. And some places need dictators. And not to say that I'm a fan of Saddam or this. Again, he was a brutal dictator, took a lot of lives. I get it. But we created such a power vacuum over there during that time period when we removed him, and it's never been replaced. I mean, it's like, and I read the guys, some of his posts or whatever. It reminds me of Josh's, hey, how are you going to solve the world's problems? You've got 120 characters. It's like, okay, yeah, right. Because I'm going to be able to put all that in 120 characters. But we essentially turned Iraq into a failed state. I mean, just the fact that he was like, hey, we put in a government that's still running today. It's like, okay, so you clearly have no idea about geopolitics or anything like that. But you had this power vacuum that was created that's still going on today. There were over 4,000 lives that were lost with Iraq. When you look at Afghanistan, and Luke, you can stop me if you want me to get into too much Afghanistan. I'll tell you, my Afghanistan piece is going to be much shorter than Josh's, because basically we went to war, lost 2,459 lives, about another 2,500 wounded, to free the government or overthrow the Taliban to give it right back to the Taliban. That's what we did. Oh, and by the way, when we gave up Bagram and we, had all of our planes that all the Afghans were falling from and this and that, we actually had to turn around and buy the fuel to get out of Afghanistan back from the Taliban. That's what that boils down to. That's what we gave up. Now, there's obviously a lot more to it. You look at the war on terror, GWAT. I think Iraq kind of got rolled up into that, even though, as Josh mentioned, there wasn't really a whole lot of prevalence of that going on. You had some freedom fighters moving in and out, but I think a lot of that was carryover from the Iran-Iraq days, and just the fact that the place is a shithole. That's the way it is, the way it operates. But it wasn't necessarily like a breeding ground for a bunch of quote-unquote freedom fighters that were looking to attack the U.S. With Afghanistan, we were sold that, right? But I shouldn't say sold that. I mean, we obviously know 9/11 and what happened there, but the objectives continued to change, and everything continued to change year after year after year. The goalposts moved, and you look at 2 decades later, and again, we overthrew the Taliban to give the country back to the Taliban for 2,459 lives. That's Afghanistan summed up for you. And the minute that they pulled out, I mean, they're all, and again, not all of these terrorists agree. There's a lot of infighting, Al Qaeda and the Taliban, right? You get a lot of that, but it does become a safe haven just because of the vastness of the country, the lack of resources, lack of the ability to provide any type of oversight or rule in that country, and it becomes a safe haven for terrorists and other quote unquote freedom fighters that either want to go blow up something in Europe or the United States. Then you couple both of those with, and I'll tie it in here, with like our southern border, the way that's been over the last 4 years. So you can just imagine, what that leads to. And I think a lot of those impacts, I mean, one, we've seen it for the last 2 decades, but a lot of that stuff's going to be felt for another 2 decades.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys, man. All solid points. I think that pretty much covers it. When it comes to Iraq, like Josh said, we learned the hard way that the world needs dictators sometimes, and Saddam was keeping everything together. I think, why? First of all, with Afghanistan, that had to happen because we had to blow off some steam, right? It just had to happen. We had to show the world we're not gonna deal with this. But then Roger said it was mission creep, and it turned into something else. I think that Iraq was also a little bit of blowing off some steam. We just had to find somebody else to F up. I've always thought that was part of it, kind of a cyclical, natural thing almost. But with Saddam, I mean, good grief, do we not miss Saddam? It's like I've missed Saddam every day since like 2013, maybe even before that. Keeping the place in line, like Tito in Yugoslavia, the old Yugoslavia. That dude held Gaddafi. Oh man, the Arab Spring.
And these are shitbags, okay? Like I don't want anybody to misconstrue. I mean, these guys are brutal dictators that killed a lot of people.
But on the other hand, like with Tito in particular, and by extension, even Saddam and Gaddafi, it's one of these philosophical questions. Yeah, they were brutal because they had to be brutal in order to keep control. And keeping control over Kurds, Sunnis, and Shias, you got to be a little brutal. In Libya, keeping control over the tribes, you got to be brutal. Somebody raises their hand, man, you're not gonna smack it, you're gonna cut it off. Same as in the Balkans, man, with Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croatians. Man, you got to rule with an iron fist. But if you keep your stuff in line, you're gonna be okay. But if you start, you start raising up a little bit, now you're going to get smacked down. They had to be brutal. And, I'm not saying they weren't evil. I'm not saying that. But at the same time, they did what they had to do. And you look at the pain and suffering that's been caused in all three of those regions, Libya, the Balkans, and Iraq. The amount of suffering that's happened in Iraq in particular over the past, almost 20 years, I think far outweighs the level of brutality that existed under Saddam. Now, the question with Saddam, Roger, you came off mute. Do you want to say something?
No, I was just throwing out, look at the Arab Spring from Gaddafi, right? I know we're throwing in a lot of dictators together in the same bag, but look at the Arab Spring with Gaddafi, where it's estimated over 61,000 deaths as of several years ago were attributed directly to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like Josh, I think Josh, it's been said to you, Josh. I think it might have been said to Roger, but it's definitely been said to me, where people, you get to know these Afghans or Iraqis really well. And they're like, look, man, when Saddam was in control, there weren't explosions on my street. The power was on all the time. I didn't have to worry about my wife going to the market, stuff like that. So, I mean, and they were saying that about the Taliban in Afghanistan, which is kind of crazy. But quick note on Saddam. I almost see it as a diplomatic failure. Could we not have kept that guy in line? And I asked myself, could we not have kept him in line? And then I wonder, well, Saddam had a lot of receipts for a long time. It's like the old joke. How did we know that Saddam had, weapons of mass destruction? Because he has the receipts. Because he bought them from us. We have the receipts, that is. It's like, and then with the Taliban, I heard, I think it was a Sean Ryan podcast, if somebody was talking, some expert in that the Taliban was ready to give up bin Laden, or at least tell him to get gone, just right before the invasion. And, I'm sure that was swirled around high level diplomatic, circles, but it goes back to, I think we just had to blow off some steam, and it's like, no, it's too late for all that. We're going in there. We're going to keep you in the Stone Age.
I was good with that though, right? Like the invasion of Afghanistan, even if they would have,
Absolutely.
if they came up and said, hey, we will give you Osama bin Laden, all of Al Qaeda that are inside Afghanistan right now. Hey, we got them. They're in prison. You can come and get them. That would not have sufficed for what the response needed to be. After 9/11, the response needed to be what it was in Afghanistan, all the way up to Tora Bora, right? That is what we needed. I was good with that. No problem with that. Up to Tora Bora. After Operation Anaconda, that was time to leave. We should not have stayed past that. And what should we have done with Saddam? We do the same thing with Saddam that we do with KJU. Every 6 months, that guy rattles his sword. He launches a missile into the Sea of Japan. He launches a missile into the Pacific or something, whatever. So let everybody know, like, hey, I'm still here. They do a nuclear test, out at Kimberley. And okay, yeah, man, we got you. You're still there. Here's some more, flour and bags of rice. There you go. You do the same thing with Saddam.
Yeah, this guy, his this is his thrust. And Roger was saying it sounded like a child, and Roger was right. This was his response. Dude, we destroyed Iraq's armed forces. We obliterated the government. We set up a new government there, which still operates, and we come and go as we please. Our objective was to stop Saddam Hussein from developing nuclear weapons and further threatening the world. Okay, let's take that point by point. Number one, we destroyed Iraq's armed forces. Well, first of all, we disbanded it. We gave them a blow, probably took out 25% of their capability, maybe more. But then we dismantled the entire armed forces, which was a huge mistake. I hope you all agree with that. Huge mistake.
It was terrible.
That's what caused the
insurgency.
Insurgency, yeah. We obliterated their government. Well, yes, we did do that, but that was not a win. Could have kept the Ba'ath Party in power. We could have kept them in power and had an election like a year or two later and see what's what, set up a new government there, which still operates. Yeah, it's operated by Iran. We come and go as we please. Well, we come and go as we please into Baghdad and basically Erbil and points north of Erbil. That's it. There are places in Iraq we do not come and go as we please, my friend. Our objective was to stop Saddam Hussein from developing nuclear weapons. Well, ask Israel if you can do that without invading. And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. They destroyed the Osirak reactor in Iraq years before that. It's a childish point of view. This kid. I don't know how else to put it.
So when do we go into Iran?
Yeah, exactly. And when do we go into Myanmar? And when do we go into, Zimbabwe? When do we go into all these different countries?
Libya,
Yemen,
Somalia.
Go down the list.
We're already kind of in Somalia. Yeah.
North Korea.
Idiots. That dude's an idiot.
And it sucks. We fought in 2 wars. We said it was the best of times, the worst of times. But dude, the 3 of us are 2-time losers when it comes to winning wars.
We're 0-2, baby. 0-2.
I don't know. The Balkans, maybe you could count that. 1 and 2.
Nah, it wasn't a war.
Really?
Well, they're doing okay. Right
well,
now.
Yeah, I guess now you look at, are they doing okay as a result of what we did? I don't know if I'm not sure. Like when you look at, I can't speak for Bosnia because I haven't been back there. But Croatia was never really that bad. Not back when I was there. You had Bosnia, but I don't know how good or bad Bosnia is lately. I don't keep track of that. But yeah,
they're doing all right. They're keeping it together. It flares up from time to time. It flared up not too long ago in Kosovo, but they got that under control. I haven't heard anything about that lately. I should probably do some research on that before Monday.
Yeah.
Oh
no.
So,
Kosovo would agree that they're doing pretty well. They are much happier. They're much happier than they were when Arkansas Tigers were rolling through there in 1998 for sure.
It is quieter though. That whole region. I was sending pictures to Josh today for some little project he's got going on, and I was going through and pulling up some of those photos. I was like, man, this. Of course, back then we're talking about pre 9/11, right? And so that's what we knew of combat. Man, there's some rough areas there, man. Looking at pictures of old, Sarajevo and Bosnia in general. There were some rough areas where you see the sandbags and it's over the hills. And I sent him a couple of pictures of like downtown Sarajevo where there used to be this old, I have to look it up. I think it used to be some type of media building, newspaper or whatever. And dude, like I was scared to drive by this thing every day because it had to be, 50, 60 stories high. And at any minute, it's like, this thing's going to fall over. And you don't even know what direction it's going to fall over in or whatever. But it was some rough times. But I say, in the last several years, maybe, pre-COVID, it seems like it's been pretty quiet. I think you brought up a couple of things here and there, Luke. It gets a little chippy, but like you said, they tamp it down pretty quick. And all in all, man, it's not bad.
You talk about the buildings being damaged and stuff. I don't know if I told this on the podcast. It was probably very early on, but when we were living in Slovenia and I was traveling quite a bit to Croatia, I went to this. It was the military intelligence headquarters. Like it wasn't the headquarters. It was more whatever. It was a military base basically. So it was like tactical military intelligence headquarters, right? And they were in a building that was actually pretty historic, where there was a siege of this particular headquarters back when the Serbs invaded Croatia. And this building on one side is completely riddled with bullets. As of 2020, it was riddled with bullets. And I thought about it a lot, and that's where they work. They go into work there every day. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, you know what? It's real for these people. And they're not going to repair this building, because the Serbs are still their enemy, and they always will be. And it's like, no, this is what we go into work every day, and we remember by looking at the bullet holes in this building. It was under siege, less than 20 years ago. It's just, it's just a different world over there, man. And they don't forget. We always tell people, man, that history runs deep over there, real deep. Yep. But now we're going to have a Fox News anchor as Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Damon was the first one to text me, and I was like, Pete Hegseth, and I had to look it up because he didn't even say what context. So I had to look it up, and I was like, huh, I didn't even know Pete Hegseth knew thing one about the military. I had no idea. So I looked him up a little bit, and I don't know, he seems to have some smarts. He must have impressed Trump. But what I heard, Roger, was that this was like a last minute decision. It's like, oh, let's put Pete Hegseth in there because he wasn't like the front runner or anything.
Yeah, I tell you, I know most of the stuff that I know from him or of him over the last several years has been his time on Fox News. So I knew he was a veteran, knew he was combat arms, Iraq, and I think he also did Afghanistan. And I have not read his book, but from what I heard, his book is pretty fantastic. And he's been very critical of the military, much like us, especially senior level leadership, right? Quote unquote stractical or strategery, those type of decisions or whatever by our generals. And especially when you look at Afghanistan, which all of us, I mean, it seems like everybody except for Austin and Milley was criticizing that withdrawal and maybe Biden. So I knew a little bit about his history from there. What's amazing to me is, and we'll go, I know later in this episode, we're going to go down the cabinet picks that Trump has supposedly thrown out. He's tweeted, right? I think everything I've seen has been on his letterhead that he tweeted or True Social, whatever. So I haven't seen anything like, from the office of Trump or whatever. So, a lot of it's assumptions still, but there's a lot of pushback. But when you look at the cabinet that we currently have, dude, there's no comparison. I'll take Pete Hegseth every day over Lloyd Austin. Every single day. Lloyd Austin got sick, damn near died, and like disappeared for 4 days and didn't tell anybody. This is your Secretary of Defense. Oh, I just had a lapse in judgment, because there's nothing going on in the world right now, right? And then didn't even delegate authority to his deputy.
Who was also on vacation.
Yeah, well, he was also on vacation. I think the deputy was like, it was kind of weird how the media covered it. They backtracked real quick because initially, like we were talking about, he's on vacation or he's out. And then it was like, hey, he's out. You're in charge. Oh, yeah, I'm covering down. Well, where are you at? Oh, yeah, well, I'm on vacation too. I mean, when you look at that, when you look at Merrick Garland as the AG, I mean, we'll go down the list, but you just look at the current admin. When you look at Mayorkas, dude, you can't get any worse than that. And people are coming out pooping all over some of these people. Now, I do say, and again, we don't have to go too far down this road yet. I know we're going to cover the ones that are known, but when you look at the Attorney General that was announced earlier, Matt Gaetz, I think he might be a throwaway. He's going to be tough to get through, right? We can get into that. When you look at DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, she's going to be another tough one, I think, to get through. And Hegseth, I think he actually gets through. He's got a lot of supporters on X. He's got a lot of supporters on the right. I don't know if the conservative media, it seems like a lot of them support him as well. But I definitely don't think that you get any worse than Lloyd Austin. And at the end of the day, and this is something that Trump's been good about, people criticize him over this, but it's, hey, man, if they're not doing the job, then you fire them. Like, I don't have a problem with bringing somebody in with some new ideas and this and that, new way forward. And, it's still going to be Trump's agenda. And at the end of the day, if he doesn't like what they're doing or the outcome, then you fire him. My problem is when there's zero accountability. Okay, when you have failures like the one in Afghanistan where nobody was fired. Instead, they're giving out awards to people, okay, for that withdrawal. That is my issue with it. So, hey, man, give the guy a fair shot. Give him 6 months. If it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, then get rid of him and you find somebody else. I mean, that's, I don't know. Josh, you see that any different?
No, I don't see it any different at all. I legit did not know the name Pete Hegseth until one of you nerds put it in the text group, and I was like, "Who is that?" He's going to be Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense. I was like, I don't know who he is because I don't watch Fox News. I stopped watching Fox News when Tucker left, and even before that, the only time I ever watched Fox News was just Tucker. I have not watched a regular Fox News program probably since 2020, maybe even 2019. I just don't. To be fair, I don't watch any of the other news outlets either. So looked up Pete Hegseth. Everybody's like, this dude's he got out as a major in the National Guard. And of course people automatically jumped on him about not having the experience, not being qualified, not this, that, or the other. And one person in there said, just don't think that Pete Hegseth is qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. And it was somebody wrote an article, and after that it was comma a defense lobbyist stated. It was like, oh, the defense a defense lobbyist doesn't like Pete Hegseth. I was like, I don't really know the dude, but now he's got my support. Like, if he has upset the right people. And, of course you have all these, these ex-pundits talking about, how he doesn't have the experience. Well, how does a major, how are you going to replace him with, a 4-star, flag officer? It's like that same 4-star flag officer who spent the last 20 years losing 2 major wars. Yeah. Don't ever come at me about some, we need a 4-star flag officer because they understand the military. No, they don't. They absolutely don't. And Lloyd Austin damn sure doesn't. Never has. He was the CENTCOM commander when the assessment on ISIS came out and when Obama labeled them as, quote, the JV team. Yeah. That JV team took over the northern parts of Syria and the northern part of Iraq with a quickness. And they damn near took over Baghdad. So to make the argument that Lloyd Austin, because he's a 4-star, former 4-star general, is qualified because he's get the F out of here with that. That's ridiculous.
I would say the amount of 4 stars that actually are qualified, there's less that aren't qualified than are within the 4-star ranks. I would say maybe 10% of 4 stars and 3 and 2 stars, put it to you that way, are less than 10% are actually qualified, who actually know what they're doing, who are Patton-esque or, whatever, or MacArthur-esque. But Josh said something, was it on the podcast or maybe it's in the chat, where he's like, I don't agree with former military being the Secretary of Defense. I thought a lot about that. And I have to say, I think Josh is right on that. Never really considered that. But if you look at the civil military divide and how our system's set up, it probably should be a civilian, who's never served. I actually kind of agree with that. I don't think it's the end of the world if you do get somebody that's been in uniform. I just think it's better. Now, the argument I would make against, and I like the Pete Hegseth pick. We'll see how it turns out. But the argument that would be made against is, well, it's an executive type position. Right. And it's a pretty damn big organization. It's the biggest, and, a major probably doesn't have that executive type experience. But how well has that worked out for us in the past 50, 60 years? Look at Rumsfeld, look at, Robert McNamara. I mean, that guy he did have military experience. He was in the Army Air Corps, but I think he was.
Yeah, but where did he get us? Where did McNamara get us?
Well, it depends on how you see the Vietnam War, I guess. but anyway, yeah, I'm all about, we've said this before about senior enlisted and senior officers. The higher you go up in rank, the more out of touch you are with what's actually going on in the force. That's my opinion. And you really have to fight against that in both areas, senior enlisted and senior officer. But speaking of another mid-grade officer, Tulsi Gabbard's going to be the director of national intelligence.
Dude, that set social media on fire.
Which is strange because I don't see the problem really. I think it's hilarious that I think a lot of these moves, I don't know if Trump is trying to be funny about it, but it is funny that she was placed on the list, on the TSA list for whatever reason. And now she's going to be the DNI. And it's like, oh man. And some of these are just hilarious. Now she won't be anywhere near your guns, Josh. So are you okay with that pick with Tulsi for DNI?
I'm agnostic on that one. I don't care one way or the other. Here's one of the what I don't understand. We haven't seen his name yet, and we haven't even seen his name mentioned as a contender. Where is Rick Grinnell?
I don't know, man. Maybe ambassador to NATO. I don't know. Yeah, where's
I
Rick
mean,
Grinnell? There's a lot of names.
yeah, Rick Grinnell has been from day one. He has been an ardent Trump supporter. He's been a Trump loyalist. He was ambassador to Germany during Trump's first administration. But you haven't even I really haven't even seen him on social media.
Which
Does
tells
he even
me
want to do anything? I mean, he may not even want to do it. And he's on there. He does have a couple
That's true.
posts here and there on X, but he may want to sit it out. Like it's, McCarthy, the former speaker came out the other day and said, yeah, I actually don't want to serve in the cabinet. I can do a lot better. And usually that means money, right? I can make a lot more money doing things on the outside than I can on the inside. But you got some folks and I'm not tracking what he's got going on in his personal life, but my assumption would be he's made it clear that he does not want to play a role. Because otherwise, I agree with you. You would throw his name out there for several positions.
I thought he would have been a clear choice for like sextate. Have a Rick Grinnell sextate or like ambassador to the UN. In some role. Because I thought Rick Grinnell was a good, I thought he was good at his job. I thought he was, good dude. He had some really great policy positions and thoughts and stuff, but I was surprised not to see his name out there yet.
Well, again, that's my overall takeaway from all these people, and we can go down these, one by one, but you can't get any worse than the policies that we had, and I think going back to Luke's point with that executive experience, especially when you look at the DOD and the Pentagon, you know what? He's going to have 50,000 other staff officers below him, general staff and below, that have that quote unquote executive experience. This is not a guy at that level that's going to get into the weeds. He is going to carry out the Trump agenda, and then those that below him, hey, you guys go figure this out. And so I kind of agree with the, you can have a civilian in charge that doesn't necessarily have to have that military type experience, because you've got, a whole pool below you that's going to have that. You're just here to lay out what the mission is and let them figure out how to accomplish that thing. Secretary of State, we start with Marco Rubio. What do you think, Luke? Happy with that pick?
Whatever. I think he'll be fine. I think that going back to Josh's Rick Grinnell, Secretary of State piece, that's probably the most prestigious appointment. In my opinion, that's probably the most prestigious, high profile. Some people might argue Department of Defense or Secretary of Defense. I think it's Secretary of State, because they're third in line. And it's like, okay, so I think there was a lot of political capital with the Secretary of State pick. I think when Rubio was told that, hey, it's not going to be you, he's going to be, well, I'm going to need something here. It's like, well, we'll give you Secretary of State. I just don't think Grinnell had that kind of political capital, the same as Rubio. So I think that was 100% political. I don't have a problem with it, really. I think Rubio and I probably see eye to eye on a lot more than our current Secretary of State, than Blinken. I think it'll be fine. It's just, when I look at all these picks, it's like, can they work together? Will Marco Rubio deign to work with, a Pete Hegseth, for instance? I hope so, because a lot of this is, can these people work together? Can they work together to get the job done?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I really hope they can.
But you got somebody in charge now, right? I mean, you've caught it before. It's like,
yeah.
Hey, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So it does become a bigger deal when you've actually got a president, commander in chief.
Yeah, I think Rubio's probably really happy with the way this turned out. He's still in the game, still in the hunt. I don't know, Josh. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm looking at the open cabinet positions, and Grinnell, it's like, I don't know, ambassador to NATO might be one. They already put Huckabee in Israel. He's the ambassador to Israel.
Great move.
You still got a few out there. You've got the big ones, transportation, energy, education will be interesting, because you talk about people lose their minds. This is going to be 4 years of people losing their minds, because it's just a minefield. Like Josh said, I think Pete Hegseth commented that women shouldn't have combat roles, right? Now, I like what cynical Publius, however you say that, the guy on X, cynical Publius, retired Army officer, I think Army, I don't know. But he laid down a list of just common sense stuff. And he said, he goes something about combat roles. He's like, yeah, on the front lines, no. but there are a lot of damn good female fighter pilots. And I was like, I trust that dude, you know. And he's like, as long as there's just one standard, he doesn't have a problem with it. And but Hegseth this is what I'm saying with the minefield. Get back to that. You can hit on that if you want, but there's just minefields all over the place. Like Hegseth's going to have to answer some tough questions in the confirmation about, women in combat roles that are going to fall on deaf ears, just is just so many minefields, dude.
Women shouldn't be in combat roles.
Yes, you've said.
So, not saying they can't do it. It's not because they're incapable. Simply saying that's not where women should be.
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's a pretty deep issue. I agree with you. Like down at the deep root base level, I agree with you. I don't think it's a good place where we are in society when we're willing to sacrifice women like that, and a lot of it is because the wars we've been fighting. It doesn't seem that brutal, but man, where the rubber meets the road, you don't want the only thing that's going to save your society, which is women's ability to birth. You don't want them on the front lines. You don't want to even risk that. It's just it's from a purely natural point of view. I think two things are very unhealthy. One slightly or much more unhealthy than the other as a sign of where you are as a society. One is, yes, we demand women be on the front lines when we don't have to. It's different in Israel. Sure. They have to. We're not at that point in this country. Number one. Another bad sign of society is all this fight for abortion, right? All this fight for it. It's like, I'll go back to Clinton, man, safe, legal, and rare. I mean, it should be rare should be the number one key term in that. It's like, but instead we're just fixated on it, and we're fixated on destroying ourselves as a species. So yeah, I agree with you, Josh. It is what it is.
On the Rubio pick, and so that's a great point, right? Because Rubio lobbied hard in Florida leading up to the election for Trump. He stumped for him and stumped for him and stumped for him. And you go back and look at, how much of the Hispanic vote that Trump took, especially in Florida, Miami-Dade County. Rubio is the son of Cuban immigrants. I think his mom was a hotel maid, and I forget what his dad did, but I mean, like, yeah, they were, Cuban immigrants. So I mean, he absolutely helped Trump down there, and that's a great point. That that was probably some. Rick Grinnell doesn't have that wasta because he lives in L.A., right? And you're not going to get L.A. to vote for Donald Trump. That's just not going to happen. But my only concern with Rubio is a war hawk. And, if he does have Trump's ear, you're potentially looking at us getting involved militarily somewhere in the next 4 years, because Rubio is he is a war hawk, and I want to say he's an establishment guy, but his hearing, I kind of look at it like this: the confirmation hearing process. If both sides are voting for you to get through, you might not be the one I want, right? And that, as bad as that sounds, both sides are like, yeah, that guy's solid, that guy's good. I'm like, to me, that's a red flag. And Rubio is probably going to have not all Democratic support, because some of them are just going to, vote no because he's a Trump nominee, and they're just going to vote no because they're going to vote no. But I think you're going to have a decent amount of Democrats that vote yes for Rubio as Sec State, and to me, that's a red flag for sure. So
yeah, and he is just short of establishment. I mean, I think I agree. I mean, he's one step away from it, right?
I just saw something Josh wrote on X on the C3 account. Damn it, now I lost it.
I called somebody retarded, didn't I?
Well, no, it was Representative Abigail Spanberger, where she, as a former CIA case officer, I saw men and women in the intelligence community put their lives on the line every day for this country, and I'm appalled at the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard. And Josh put all we needed to see was, as a former CIA case officer, opinion automatically dismissed. And I was like, yeah, 100%, I love it. And so I look at her original comment. We aren't the only ones who feel that way. So a lot of people put that ignore all after as a CIA case officer.
Because again, we look at what we've lived, on the last 4 years. Everything they've been wrong. Like you got all these, well, Trump's terrorists and Trump's economy. Like, these are the same experts, air quotes, and the same economists, the same Nobel Prize winning whatever that couldn't see record inflation for 4 years. Right? Like I couldn't care less about what they have to think. I mean, there is some common sense here that dictates. And I think when you look at the failures of the intelligence community, when you look at the failures of the Secret Service, when you look at the failures of our foreign policy, we've had 8 embassies evacuated last time I checked under this administration. Like, I really don't need to hear exactly what you're saying. Well, hey, as a former case officer, you probably suck, and your leaders do as well.
Especially from the CIA, you're like, oh, from the same agency who said they didn't see the Taliban taking over Afghanistan as quick as they did, from the same agency who said Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian compromise, the same agency who said that, Trump colluded with Russia, the same agency who got a bunch of their folks killed at Fob Chapman because of their own hubris. You mean that agency? Yeah, go sit down.
So field case officers, right? What would you guys say? Because there are some good ones. Who's that dude on Fox News? He's
Dan
been on
Hoffman.
Dan Hoffman. Yeah, he seems like he was a good one, right? But I would say, just based on my experience, field case agents, I'm not talking about ground branch, field case officers, 1 in 10 are decent, because the farm does not bestow upon you some kind of magical power to see the world for what it is and have this geopolitical, savvy and all this stuff. The last 2 case officers I talked to, one of them just justified till he was blue in the face the execution of a U.S. citizen without due process, Anwar al-Awlaki. We've talked about that on the podcast, and he just would not shut up about it. He's like, well, a room of lawyers said it was okay, so you're smarter than them. I was like, well, no, I'm not smarter than them, but I do believe in the Constitution. So, and then the other one, we had a long argument about who's the bigger existential threat, Russia or China, and he said Russia all day long. And I was just like, okay, you guys, you have all the degrees and everything, you went to all the right schools, but why? You're idiots. John Radcliffe for CIA director, by the way.
Yeah,
who used to be the DNI. So who used to be the DNI. So is that a demotion or not?
Yes.
I mean, technically it is, right?
Technically, yeah, it's a demotion.
Right, Roger?
Well, I mean, I guess if you were going to promote him, what would you make him? Sex state?
Well, I'm just saying, well, I would say it technically it's a demotion, but like on your resume, like on the stuff you put in your I Love Me book and everything, it's probably cooler to be the director of the CIA than the director of national intelligence,
Yeah.
And they're all going to have an asterisk beside their stuff anyway, because it's going to be under Trump's term or whatever. So, so let's move on to the next one. The AG, Matt Gaetz. What do we think? What are you thinking, Josh? Matt Gaetz? Yes, no, like him, hate him?
I'm a no, man. Out of so far, I've been good with all of Trump's picks up to Matt Gaetz. The whole investigation thing with minors. That dude, I can't get past that. Not saying the dude's guilty, but I'm saying like he's being investigated for it. Like that needs to run its course. And if he's exonerated, he's exonerated. All right, good to go. If not, then he should, fucking be launched into the sun. With all the other pedos. Yeah, man, I think there's better choices out there for Matt Gaetz. And I think you brought it up. Maybe he is the sacrificial, maybe he's a sacrificial lamb. But when you look at the other options for attorney general, I think Missouri's attorney general, what's his name? I think his last name's Andrew Bailey. That guy has filed more lawsuits against the Biden administration than any other attorney general, to include Kim Paxton, in the last 4 years. And he's won a lot of them. Missouri has handed it to the Biden administration time and time again. So I think there was better choices. But, like you said, you brought it up. Maybe that's just the throwaway. Like everybody focuses on that, and they just rubber stamp yes on the rest of the nominees. I don't know. I
Well,
can't
because
get
then
on
you
board
give
with
up
that,
the special. You have to go into a special election, right? That's the other thing is you give up majority in the House because
Yeah,
senators can get appointed, but the representatives you have to go
you
through a
have to have a
special
special
election.
election. Yeah, and the good thing is that Gates's district is pretty red. But why would you run that risk? Right? Why would you run that risk? I mean, North Carolina is pretty red, but they didn't elect Mark Robinson as governor,
Right.
right? Because he was a terrible candidate. So the GOP doesn't have a good history of putting up great candidates in special elections or, in those times when they really need somebody. I don't get it. And then, they pulled Elise Stefanik, to go be, was she ambassador to the United Nations? Yeah.
Yep.
They pulled her, from the House. And it's like, guys, like your margins in the House are already slim. You're going to get to the point where you can't have any defections on, pick your bill. You can't have any defections. It's because you started pulling folks from the House. Come on. Right. Now they're talking about appointing Byron Donalds to fill Rubio's Senate seat. Right. So there's another House member gone. And so it's like, okay, you were +4 in the House. Well, now you're back to even because you picked them all for your cabinet. And so I don't know. But yeah, I'm a no on Gates. Luke, what do you think?
I'd forgotten about the whole minors thing. But I heard something today that particular one was dropped, but he's still under ethics investigation. And if he is under ethics investigation, when that investigation ends, when he leaves the House, then the investigation ends. So I don't know. I'd forgotten about that. I just don't like him as a person. I think he's a douchebag.
Yeah.
He did something on the floor of the RNC and they was caught on somebody caught it on their phone video and he was just being a douche.
That was him and McCarthy.
Yeah, he was being a douche. Some dude told him to pipe down. He goes, he kind of bowed up. He turned around to bow up on the guy, and the guy was way bigger than him. So he just immediately backed down. And it's like, dude, you're a douche. You're a douche because if you do something like that's the only place you can do something like that because you can get away with it because no one's going to knock your head off. And people like that are douchebags. I don't care who they are. He just seems like a douche. And like all he did, with ousting the former speaker, like him or hate him. I mean, that was not healthy for the Republican Party. We talked about it on this podcast. It was unnecessary. It was completely unnecessary. And yes, Josh, he has a very punchable face. You're 100% right. Good Lord.
We didn't get anybody better, right? And so I was, at the beginning when Gates did that with McCarthy, it was like, yeah, man. Hey, McCarthy didn't keep his promise. Hey, he's got to go. Let's oust him. But then they elected Mike Johnson. Is that dude? He's just as bad, if not worse, than McCarthy, because he's caved on every single thing. And so it was like, okay, good job, Matt Gaetz. All you did, you're right. All he did was make the party look bad. There was nothing accomplished through that, nothing whatsoever. And he spearheaded it. I don't like the dude. I'm a no man.
Well, and that, as we talked about before, that supposedly rumor mill, that's the big rift between him and McCarthy is the ethics investigation because of the underage kid, and I think the kid's like 17 or 16, whatever the age is or was or whatever. But, the federal investigation was dropped. McCarthy refused to sweep the House ethics, which has been going on for years now. He refused to sweep that under the carpet. And supposedly that's where the strife comes in between them two. But I think he's a throwaway. I mean, he's probably going to struggle. Although I don't think the AG is that far fetched for his skill set, because the reality is you're just directing the Department of Justice with what Trump wants, and you've got people below you that are going to go out and prosecute, and you're going to appoint special prosecutors or whatever. But I think his whole play in the House with McCarthy, the whole play with the Speaker of the House. The numbers didn't change. You can oust who you want. If your numbers don't change, you're still dealing with the same field. So it's very hard to change directions on that. But I do think he's going to be the throwaway. DHS, Josh, or I guess we can start with Luke this time. Kristi Noem, maybe the other throwaway. What do you think?
Dogs everywhere. Took a deep breath.
Not for long. Not for long.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why you're.
Well, is she in competition because you've had the marshals shoot a dog, right? And then you had
ATF.
or ATF, and then you had who shot the squirrel, or who killed the squirrel and the raccoon?
That was New York. That was New York City.
Yeah, it was New
Right.
York
So
State.
so now you're trying to, maybe DHS is trying to step their game up, and
I don't know. Why do you think? Let me shoot it right back to you. Why do you think she's going to have a tough time getting confirmed?
I think from what I've read, a lot of folks are beating her up on experience, foreign policy, the border, that type of stuff. And I'm with you, dude. I'm just saying, what I'm reading, as far as what the pundits are saying, you just got a lot of folks that, again, it goes back. I thought Josh's tweet or response about the generals that have lost us the last 2 wars, that's spot on. It's like, hey, obviously, again, the last 4 years have sucked at the border. I don't need those folks down there anymore. Let's get somebody new. And I keep falling back on, hey, these aren't her policies. I mean, we've gone 4 years without a commander in chief, essentially, or without a president. You're going to have, hey, Trump, lock the border down. All she's got to do is execute and pass it down. So I think she can do that. It's just, is she going to be articulate enough, forceful enough, and get the resources that she needs?
Well, this is the exact opposite type of, I was explaining this to my wife last night. This is the exact opposite case for Pete Hegseth, right? Where I was saying, well, what they're going to ding him on is lack of executive experience, right? This is the exact opposite, where it's like, well, maybe she doesn't live. She does. She's South Dakota. So she doesn't live on a border, but or govern a state.
She did send troops down 5 different times, I think, to
but the thing is,
southern border.
There's the highest executive position, in the country is definitely the president of the United States. The second, as far as government is concerned, is a state governor. That person, any state governor, if they've run their state well, has proven they're a good executive. So if you're going to put her in charge of the third largest government organization, first being DOD, second being VA, and third being Department of Homeland Security, well, I mean, she's got the executive experience for it. She's got a bulldog border czar. But hey, I want to touch on this real quick, and I want to get this out right now. Prepare for disappointment, everyone. Prepare for disappointment with the deportation stuff, because right now, I would do the same thing. All this deportation stuff right now is talk. It's all talk, but it's not talk for talk's sake. The reason they're coming out, there's another landmine, Roger, like all these landmines. The reason they're putting out, we're going to deport 2 million people in the first whatever. That is not, they know they're not going to be able to do that. The reason they're saying that is to stem what's called a pull factor. What's pulling all these migrants into the United States is knowing that they're not going to be deported. That is a major pull factor. So they're trying to dull that pull factor and be like, oh shit, this guy's not playing around. He's going to deport all these people. Maybe we need to think twice about coming over, and because, you guys know the deal. They usually send, one of the reasons it's all males coming across is because the males come in first, they clear the way, then they direct their families coming in later. That's just how it works down there in a lot of cases. So it's like, they're trying to stem the flow. So I think that she's going to have some bulldogs if she gets in. She has her bulldog border czar. Border Patrol's already on her side. ICE is already on her side. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if she's going to have a hard time or not. I think all of them are going to get, whatever. But boy, what a day to be Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins or Mitt Romney. They became relevant all of a sudden. Very relevant. Susan Collins already said today she's not on board with, what was it, Matt Gaetz?
The fact that you can already come out. Yeah, the fact that you can already, and I think Josh, even both of you guys said it, the fact that it doesn't matter any conservative bill, any conservative nominee, appointee, whatever, and come out and say, hey, who are the 3 people that are going to vote against? The fact that you already know who that is, that's part of the problem that the GOP has. Yeah. Sorry, Josh, totally cut you off.
No. And it also goes back to, right, granted, Vance is going to be the tiebreaker in the Senate, but you have three GOP members that you can't count on their votes, right? So you're at what, 53 right now in the Senate? All right, well, there goes Susan Collins. If the other 2 decide that they're going to hop on board, you can't have any more defectors, right? So you're already dealing with those 3. So that sets you back to 0. If you don't have any defectors, you're good because Vance comes in. He's a tie-breaking vote for those of you who haven't read the Constitution. But you have one more defector that, jumps on board with, with Romney and Murkowski and Collins, well, then you're out. And you don't have Rubio now. You're going to have whoever he's appointed. But again, that majority could have been plus one more if you hadn't pulled Rubio for a cabinet position.
And speaking of that, because is Cornyn really going to be excited about voting for Matt Gaetz?
Lord,
no.
no.
So it's like here's where, and I know Roger's, we're getting ahead of Roger in the list, but now you've got Thune. He's in charge of the Senate now, and that guy's a game player. Some of the stuff he said about Trump early on, a lot of people don't know about that dude. So he's going to have to be the one to play these games, and is Thune going to be able to throw his weight around with, especially like Mitt Romney?
No.
Yeah, because Romney's going to be a no. There's no way Romney comes out and votes for Matt Gaetz. No way.
Nope.
No way.
You heard it here first, guys, gals, everybody.
The same with Murkowski. Done you right. There's 3 no's right there.
So maybe, hopefully, I'm hoping this is a throwaway pick to take. Let's suck all the media attention away from Pete Hegseth and Kristi Noem and all these other folks. Let's suck the media attention away from them. Have everyone dig in their heels on Matt Gaetz. So all those backroom deals, it's like, okay, you can dig your heels in on Matt Gaetz, but Kristi Noem and Pete Hegseth are going through. Fine, but we're digging our heels in on Matt Gaetz. I'm hoping that Trump is seeing this and he's like, I don't really want Gaetz. If I get him, okay, that's cool. He's loyal. But if Gaetz doesn't work, I'm going to get Kash Patel in there. And for those of you who don't know who Kash Patel is, that guy is a freaking laser guided missile. That guy's awesome. I was hoping he'd be CIA, but yeah, I don't want Gaetz.
Who else we got, Roger?
So EPA, Lee Zeldin.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a problem with that. I mean, the guy came close to flipping New York as far as the governor race. And really, it's like the EPA. It's like, you just have to deregulate, right?
Here's the people for all of these other departments, right? So the EPA, the AT, all that other stuff, their job is to go in and start firing people and deregulating. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm good. I'm good with EPA.
So with that being said, would you actually want to have the Department of Education? Would you want to be the Secretary of Education?
Yes.
The one that goes in and turns off the lights.
Yes, I would absolutely love to be, because I'm going to go through the Department of Education like Sherman went through Atlanta. Nothing's left.
I had a job one time where I went into this organization. They gave me all the files on all the sources, and my job was to go through and terminate all of them, basically, because they were all garbage. And it's one of the best jobs I ever had. It was awesome. So yeah, I'd love that job. Just go in there and just salty.
I'm just wondering if they, much like your deportations, I think the DOJ, and we can get into that, Department of Government Efficiency, at the end of the day, how efficient do they get? I don't think we're going to see like a Twitter thing when Elon Musk came in and cut 75% of the force. And, oh, by the way, it operated just fine. Much harder to do in the government. They may eliminate 2,000 positions and it'll be, hey, we saved X amount of whatever. Because ideally, it would be nice with the DOE, the Department of Education, just to be like, you cease to exist. Like, we don't even need a secretary because you're no longer a cabinet position. But I think we all know it's just not going to be that easy. It's not going to happen like that. There's going to be one appointed, and there's no doubt in my mind that department sticks around long after Trump's presidency, unless you guys.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's going away. It's the closest thing to eternal life. That's what Ronald Reagan said is a government department.
Here's the problem, though. The president does not have the authority to establish a department. That's Congress's authority, right? Because that department has to be funded, first off. And second off, you really think the legislative branch is going to open up a department and fund a department to help establish a department that is going to turn around and mess with their cash cow? Absolutely not. Here's what's going to happen. The Department of Government Efficiency is basically going to be special advisors to the president, and they're going to go through and they're going to identify, all the fraud, waste, and abuse, and they're going to come back and make recommendations to the president, and the president's going to tell Congress, stop funding this, stop funding that, and he's gonna have to use whatever political power he has to get them to do that, to start cutting that stuff. He can't establish a department. He doesn't have the authority, and Congress is not going to sign their own death warrant.
Yeah, and I think that obviously Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are a lot smarter than the three of us. I really think that, again, I think this goes back to bluster, because I think what, just listening to Elon Musk talk the last few times I've heard him speak at length, I think the thing about cutting jobs and cutting departments and all that stuff, I think that's just bluster to get people all hot and bothered about it. Meanwhile, his real goal is to cut regulation, specifically EPA regulation.
Yes.
Because he's really pissed off about the SpaceX stuff, where he's got a rocket sitting on the pad. He can build a rocket quicker than he can go through the bureaucracy to launch it. Like literally, he can build a rocket quicker than the bureaucracy takes to actually launch it. So I think Vivek, maybe not, but I think he is going to be behind the scenes, just like, same thing, advisory board. I'm working really close with my boy from New York and the EPA on just slashing these regulations.
And the FCC. I mean, he's had challenges with the FCC big time, right?
Yep.
And he's been going after them big time over the free and open airways. ODNI, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat and now Republican. What do you think, Josh?
Hey, real quick, put a pin in that. Now that Vivek has come out and done he's going to the department, not a Department of Government Efficiency. Who is DeWine going to nominate to fill his seat in Ohio?
Could still be Vivek.
Can still do it.
Vivek came out and said that he was not accepted because he would rather do the Doge thing. He posted that on X like 2 days ago. So, again, there goes another Senate seat, and it's like, fellas, what are we doing? All right. Anyway, so DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, dude, that set people on fire because, of course, all the left-wing accounts have come out now, and, it's like Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset. And, when they got challenged, okay, what do you mean Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset? And they're like, well, Hillary Clinton said she was a Russian asset in, 2016? And so 2016 or 2020, whichever one. It was like, oh, here we go. Russia. Okay, Russia. It goes back to this is me a little bit kind of not understanding. I'm not fully against it, but the director of national intelligence, they're sitting Kristi Noem running DHS, where, hey, we need you to go to the Hill and fight for resources and manage a large organization, which you have that experience as governor. Synchronizing all the intelligence agencies and reforming them. I don't know. Do you think that person should have a background in intelligence? Do you think it should at least, not necessarily be, from the intelligence community, but I mean, come on, maybe, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I think Eric Prince is the right guy for that job.
100%,
but
100%.
I tend to agree with you. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but you really don't hear much out of the ODNI. You really don't. And
their policy.
I'm telling you this though, man. Every day I look at USA Jobs, and every single day there's at least one ODNI opening, brand new position.
Senior, and there's always a senior ODNI position open.
Yeah, 15s, 14s down to.
It is like, what is going on in there? They can't keep people.
Either they can't keep people or they're growing. It's I don't know. But yeah, it's Tulsi. We'll see.
Take it one step farther. I mean, so do we think Chris Wray sticks around? Do you think Trump fires him or not?
Yes.
Okay. If Trump doesn't fire him, it will be the single biggest failure of his second term by far. Even though he did nominate him.
So then you look at Ratcliffe, and then you look at putting somebody else in Ray's position. If that happens, it goes back to, well, okay, what is Tulsi Gabbard's real job going to be there? And okay, there'll be some policy and maybe some, high level direct, action from, Trump himself. But if you've got your folks running, your two major, IC partner organizations between your FBI and CIA, how much, how muddy are her hands really going to be? Probably a non-factor for the most part, I would think.
So who does Trump replace Chris Wray with? Is that where
No
Cash
idea.
Patel comes in?
No. Well, I doubt it. Maybe.
No.
How does that work with the director of the FBI? How does that work?
So typically it's a
Anybody
10-year
else?
term. If I remember correctly, typically it's a 10-year term. However, you serve at the pleasure of the president. So he can get rid of you. But I think, as we saw with Comey, I think the norm has been, okay, they serve 10 years for continuity, yada, yada, yada.
If I'm Trump, I'm firing him on day one.
Yeah. Melania's saying that. I love how she stood up Jill Biden and did not make any bones about why she was standing her up.
I love
Dude, I know we go off track here, but you're absolutely right. I mean, the Biden dude, he has not looked happier. I have not seen that dude happier in 3 years since the election, right? I'm telling you right now. But when and maybe it's just because the three of us are petty or whatever, but you are not going to sit there and call me or my family Nazis, Hitler, fascist,
garbage,
a threat to democracy, deplorables, irredeemable, garbage. Oh, hey, man. Well, that's just politics. No, it don't really work that way. So yesterday I was a threat to democracy, but today it's better luck next time in 4 years. No, it don't work that way, and especially with rhetoric like that, you're not going to call me Hitler and then be like, oh, we're going to have because, they continue throwing that out there. Peaceful transfer of power. Yeah, peaceful because you know what? You lost the electoral vote and you lost a popular vote. So you can get the hell out now. And if I was Donald Trump, again, he's a much better guy than I am because I'm like, you know what? I actually don't need this intro meeting because believe it or not, I was the president before you. And I kind of ran this a little bit better than you. So I don't really want to, I don't want any of your stain to taint it's like Jake Sullivan. I heard Jake Sullivan, I think it was on one of the pundits was mentioning that Jake Sullivan wants to sit down and be like, hey, so, kind of want to get your thoughts on, what you're going to do and what's going to change and what you're going to do better and this and that. And it's like, well, why do you care? You're about to be out of a job in a month anyway. Like you've just totally bummed this up for the last 4 years. Don't worry about it. Go back to doing what you're doing and, let me handle it from here. So I'm with you. I like the fact that Melania stood her up and was, but apparently Jill wrote a very long letter for Donald to take back. I don't know if it was just for him or Melania or both of them or whatever, but
whatever. Well, I can't wait to read the Jill Biden tell-all book. That is going to be, she's pissed.
You said that and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I hope she writes one and I would actually buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that she would be, in depth on what happened, over the last 70 days, or however long it's been. But today I thought it was hilarious that Schumer, it was maybe yesterday, Schumer got up and congratulated Trump and everything and said, now we're going to actually have a peaceful transfer of power. And there's not going to be any talk of, stolen elections and all this stuff. McConnell gets up right after that, as old as he is, and just slapped him in the face and said, yeah, maybe we can put all that to bed. And maybe we can put to bed the foreign influence on elections too. Maybe we can put that to bed as well. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's
so we'll get to the Senate thing last, but I got two more. So we got UN, Elise Stefanik, and the CIA, John Ratcliffe. We touched a little bit on both of them. So Josh, what are your thoughts on Elise Stefanik and John Ratcliffe? Any heartache with them?
Elise Stefanik, vanilla. I'm like, meh, okay. Yeah, I mean she's a big Trump supporter. She's been very outspoken, in support of Trump. She's going to the UN. I had high hopes for Nikki Haley as the.
She's a bulldog, though, big time Israel supporter.
Are you talking about Elise Stefanik?
Stefanik, yeah.
She's
a bulldog.
You know what? Nikki Haley's a bulldog until she went to the UN and that she kind of fizzled out. So again, man, I'm excited for a couple of the picks on Stefanik. We'll see. I'm gonna take the wait and see approach because I want to see her. I want to see her perform first because it's easy to get out there and bloviate about what you like and what you want to do and this, that, and the other, and then it's like, okay, well now it's time to do it. Let's see how you do. As far as Ratcliffe, running the agency, yeah, I think I think he's a solid pick. Um, you know, I don't think people should think, should get hopeful that they're going to find out who killed Kennedy anytime soon, or well, verify that the
Confirm.
agency killed Kennedy. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that that's coming out anytime soon, but it goes back to Trump's first term. They're like, well, I'll put my a loyalist as director of agency X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, but at the end of the day, like, you have to cut out the cancer in these agencies. You have to cut out the cancer. And if you don't send somebody in there, like, I mean, dude, you need to send Anton Chigurh in there from No Country for Old Men, man. Somebody who is no emotion, no whatsoever, who goes through there and fires people. You have to get rid of these people. You got to cut out the cancer. Ratcliffe can go into the CIA and, Trump can demand this, that, and the other. But if that 14 or 15 in the agency somewhere or sitting there doesn't want to do it, it's like, no, I'm not doing that. All right, well, you either got to fire that person and make it very public and make it an example, or it's just going to be the status quo. So,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
You got to fire whoever it is. I don't care who it is. You fire the director of operations day one. Day one director
100%.
of operations is fired. That's first. And then identify all the programs that are actually important and fire all those people. You don't even have to fire them, right? You just move them somewhere else. Move them somewhere very uncomfortable. That's all you have to do. But yeah, CIA, I would not want that job. A job I would want is ambassador to the UN. You live in a swanky apartment in New York City, and you just go in and yell at dictators all day in the UN. I think that would be awesome, man. Just, oh man, and it just put it in their faces. Hey, Germans, remember when you laughed about getting oil and natural gas from Russia? You remember when you laughed at that? I don't want to see you smile in my next 4 years here. When I'm up here, you are stone-faced because you made a fool of yourselves and your country when you laughed at our president for saying you're relying too much on Russian natural gas and oil. Because what are you talking about now, Germany? What are you talking about now? The entire EU is talking about buying more LNG and petroleum from the U.S. because you were too reliant on Russian LNG and petroleum. So I don't want to see you crack a smile. I want to see a stoic I see how much I would love it. I would love that job. So I don't know. I think she is a bulldog. I don't like Nikki Haley. I think she is Liz Cheney in sheep's clothing. I hope that she goes down the ash heap of political life. I don't like Nikki Haley at all. But hopefully Elise Stefanik will be a bulldog like Nikki Haley. I don't know. No problem with that.
And a lot of that's going to be at the direction of the president, right? That he gives them. And I think what I do notice from this cabinet so far, if it sticks the way it is, and I think there's, obviously several other positions that have to get filled, but he has definitely gone to the up and coming bench and put those people in these positions. So a lot of these folks, I think, could potentially make or break their careers in these cabinet positions. It's not like, a lot of times when we look at Joe Biden, when we did the cabinet episode for him, a lot of these people are like very, very obscure folks. You hadn't heard the names of them, maybe one or two. Like most of these people here, like we know them. Okay. They've been in the public eye. It's kind of goes back to Josh's point. A lot of them have been in the House, a lot of them some prominent members of the House. You obviously challenges there. Same thing with the Senate. But these are folks that are true up and comers that could potentially make or break their career, I feel, in the next 1, 2, 3, or even 4 years serving their cabinet. Taking a step beyond that, so we had the election with the Senate Majority Leader. So, Josh, what's your initial thoughts on Senator John Thune, who's going to take over Mitch McConnell's place?
See, Roger's got a list today, Josh. He's got a list that he wants to go down. This is very unorthodox for C3.
Now, you know what it is? I actually have a new setup now, so I have a dual monitor. So I can sit there and pull things up, and I'm like, and of course, this has been on the news a lot lately, so I've got a lot of stuff on my mind. But John Thune, initial thoughts?
You had 3 bad choices.
Yeah,
they picked one. That's what I think.
And I think it's not even the least bad choice.
No,
I think that the worst choice was Cornyn The second
Yeah.
worst was Thune, and the last worst was Scott. But again, this is where Roger might see eye to eye on this with me. Maybe is that you have to have somebody in there that can marshal everything up and get the Senate whip into shape and really do those wheelings and dealings, right? And those three names, I mean, they've been around a while. We'll just see. I don't know. But again, I don't like those backroom dealing type things. So I can see Thune being a real thorn in Trump's side. I can see that.
I can too. He is the most anti-Trump of the three.
Yeah. Based on what he said in the past, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think, dude, I think by the Senate Republicans picking him, I think they are sending a message to the White House. I think that was a message, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Scott didn't even come close. And
Yeah,
Scott's
he was
the
last
most,
place, right?
Yeah, he was in last place in the first vote. And he was in last place by a lot. And he is the most pro-Trump guy in that group. And so I think the Senate was sending Trump a message on that. I really do.
Well, he was sending. I think the Senate was sending a message not only to Trump but also to the House. And here's where the rubber meets the road for all of this stuff, because we've had the Democrats in charge. It seems like forever, but it's all cyclical for the last couple of years, and then it was split up. But right now, you're coming into Trump as president, a GOP controlled House, a GOP controlled Senate. So it's easy to be the Freedom Caucus, and I'm a fan of them. I like Andy Biggs; he's my representative out here. But it's easy to say no, 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 no when you're in the minority. It doesn't really matter what you say, okay? Because it's going to pass anyway. Where the rubber is going to meet the road is the budget talks, because now you're in control, and now you're going to find true colors that come out. And here's my problem with Thune: when you go to like the Heritage Action for America, they rate conservatism and this and that, and when you look at Thune's voting scorecard, his session score, they give him 37%, lifetime 62%, average Republican 62%. But you look at the Emergency National Security Supplementation Appropriations Act, he voted yes for it. The Reforming Intelligence Security and Securing America Act, he voted no for that. The 6-bill minibus, he voted yes for that. The 6-bill minibus, again, Consolidated Appropriations Act, voted yes for that. Senate Foreign Aid Supplemental Appropriations Packet voted yes for that. These are all generally seen as anti-conservative, liberal, proposals. Conference report to the NDAA for 2024 voted yes for that. Appropriations minibus, yes to that. Schumer's continuing resolution, yes to that. When it came down to money, giving money to Ukraine, he voted no to the oversight of the funding to Ukraine. I mean, it reminds me of just the good old boy swamp. Hey, we want to keep the status quo. We can come out here and we can pick these fights. Now, these are all votes that he didn't have to vote yes on. They didn't need him, right? It was going to pass anyway with a Democrat majority. So that even, more so concerns me, because dude, why don't you just toe the party line and say no? And I say toe the party line because these are not conservative bills. These are not conservative measures. And my worry is that it's going to get a lot worse. Because when you look, that's what it was, the Hawley Amendment to create a special inspector general for Ukraine aid, which that's been the big thing, right? Oversight of the money. Where is it going? What's it being used for? He voted no for that stuff. But when it comes down to, hey, we need to pass a budget, we have complete control of the House, we have complete control of the Senate, and we have a president who's going to sign the bill. What's going to happen there? Because we've talked about it before. Fiscal conservatism has been a dead word for years. I mean, we're at 35 trillion, right? What's up, Luke?
So one of my predictions of the next 4 years, and maybe next 8 years, I'll say 4 for now, is that you've seen a lot of stuff flip on its head, right? Parties are changing. Following what you're saying, right? If Thune is just going to sign anything that comes across the desk, everybody's going to fall into line. The Democrats could play the part of being fiscal conservatives.
Absolutely.
They could definitely
and they
play
will.
that part, and they will. Yes, and it'll be very interesting to see AOC saying, "Hey, we're spending too much money." it's gonna be interesting, and it just highlights the hypocrisy on both sides, really.
Trump is not going to get his tariffs because of Thune. He is going to vote against it. and Thune is going to rally the other non-Trump supporting GOP senators to vote against it as well.
It probably depends on the tariff, right?
If you go back and you look, like Roger read out his voting record, and then just a quick search on Thune and tariffs, he hates him. He does not support him. Now he may give a little to get a little somewhere else, right? Because I mean that's just the name of the game. But the tariffs that Trump wants, he's not going to get it in its entirety, and I don't think he was going to get those anyway, right? You never get everything you ask for, but like you said, Thune is going to be a thorn in his side for the next 4 years.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's really too bad. I do like, Roger, I don't know what's next on your list, but I do like the idea of setting up a review board for general officers. I love that. And like, all you have to do is let's just start with a PT test. Let's just start there. Let's give the Joint Chiefs of Staff, let's just give them a PT test. And I think that the chairman would pass. That guy's been a big disappointment. That's a Texas Tech grad, and throughout his career, he's been talking about freaking quotas, racial quotas within the general officer
Brown?
corps. Yeah,
Yeah,
such a
that guy's
disappointment.
terrible.
That guy needs to, just resign his Texas Tech alumni status. That's all there is to it.
Another one, he should be fired on day one. Publicly.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's why I think that Hegseth, apparently he's real big on, one of y'all mentioned it. He's real big on this stuff, on the wokeness. He wants to, trim that right away. And it's like, if that's the case and he's confirmed, yeah, that guy will probably quit, which will probably be a good call. I really think I'd have to look into it. We're kind of going far afield here, but I'd really like to see General Cavoli on the Joint Chiefs. The problem is I don't know how much Pentagon staff time he has. He's current UCOM commander, but that guy's one of the few generals I've seen that's like, okay, that's the 10%. That he's the 10%. One of the very, very few. But yeah, the review board for all the general officers, I'm all about that, man. All about that.
Yeah. No, I think when it comes to, like you say, maybe Cavoli, and there's a couple others out there. I mean, he doesn't have his 4-star right now, and he would have to go take a combatant command somewhere. But Chris Donahue, or Josh Rudd, who's the current deputy commander for Indo-PACOM. I think those guys. They gotta have a little bit more time. But you talk about replacements for the chairman. Some of those they would be good. I know probably. I don't know if Carrillo would get through a confirmation hearing. He's got a little bit of a checkered past. In certain
he's a little rough around the edges.
Yeah, he's a little rough around the edges.
Well, one of our listeners, if this tells you anything about Carrillo, good or bad, you can take this either way. One of our listeners, old Big DC, he was one of Carrillo's favorite soldiers of all time.
I love it.
He loved DC, man. He loved him. Like, embrace love.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But you know what? He's a different breed of officer too. And I think
is.
we've seen this. And it's the units obviously we supported and we're out there, with deployed, while we're deployed, their leadership is expected to be in the fight. You don't just be, they don't look at their senior level command positions, i.e. majors and lieutenant colonels and above, and they don't look at those as quote unquote staff positions. You're out there with your assaulters. You're on the objective. And now obviously as you get promoted up the ranks, it's like, hey, you're not going to have your 4-star out there on the, jumping out of a helicopter, although he probably would. But when you look at that type of community and with him in particular, that's a guy who's in the fight. And that's a guy that I don't mind at that level because he's relatable. He's got the perspective and he's got the experience. It's it's no different than at the time with I forget the old tanker that was a sergeant major of the Army telling us, lecturing us that, you guys aren't in touch with your soldiers. And I just come back from a deployment. I'm like, you haven't deployed in 10 years. Actually, so I'm just coming back from, with our fellows. So you can just keep your pie hole shut. I have good perspective on what it's like to deploy and be in combat, yada, yada, yada. That guy hadn't. He'd been institutionalized for 10 years. And I think Carrilla, when you look at those generals that need to go to that review board and this and that, it's like, hey, when was the last time you actively deployed and did something? Okay. And it wasn't just purely a staff position. And I think when you get to the regular army, it's fewer and fewer. And I think that's why you end up with a lot of failed leaders, right? Because it's hey, this isn't a think tank. You're not out at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, working at BCTP or whatever, coming up with some ideological, hey, this is the way this should work. It's like, no, this is tried and true. And it goes back to the Afghanistan withdrawal that all of us sat here. And I remember us having these conversations. I'm like, all three of us were the same. Like, they are high as F if they think that the Taliban is not going to run through this place in 60 days. I think we were taking bets. Like, is this going to take a week?
Yeah, man. Josh was on point with that one. Cause I was saying a month. I remember I was like, I think a month because logistics and this and that.
Yeah. I think he said it before the next recording. He was like,
yeah. Josh was like, it'll be days. And I was like, I don't know, maybe, but I doubt it. Yeah. But we knew it wasn't going to be hey, I know I didn't go to the farm or any kind of crazy CIA school, where they teach you all these things, but I did know it was not going to take 60 days. I did know that.
Yeah. So looking at where Carrilla is right now, so he's a current CENTCOM commander. He is. I look for his name because he's going to be on the short list for chairman.
You think?
I think so. He's punched. He's punched all the right tickets.
With these guys, I just don't know the staff time. Man, somebody's getting a text message.
So
I don't know the staff time with these guys.
So he commanded Ranger Regiment. He was deputy commander at JSOC, right? He was deputy commander at 1st Infantry Division. Then he was deputy director for Special Operations and Counterterrorism of the Joint Staff. He commanded the 82nd. He was chief of staff at CENTCOM, came back, commanded 18th Airborne Corps, and then went back to CENTCOM as the commander. So he's got joint staff time already. He's commanded both, special operations and, regular conventional units. He's got the staff time. He's been around for a minute. He's got 4 stars. He's a COCOM commander. The only place for him to go from that COCOM command is to the Pentagon. That's it.
Well, I think that between him and Cavoli, given the state of the world, I'd give the nod to Cavoli right now, just because of Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a lot going on with Israel and Iran and all that stuff, but I don't know. I think either one of them would be a good pick. But man, we're really who's left on your list, Roger?
Yeah, I'm not saying Carilla's the guy. I'm just saying he's on the short list. And Cavoli's probably on the short list too.
Yeah, now my list is over with. I was just talking about the JCS. It's like, what is General Brown doing?
Being racist.
Yeah, he's being an angry black man.
I mean, it's like you don't even hear about this dude. I mean, and we got a lot going on in the world, right? We got a lot going on in the world. It's like you don't even hear anything from this guy.
Maybe maybe he was told to, hey, baby, you need to tone it down after Millie. That guy was way too public.
Yeah. Maybe he's probably, in a room that smells of, rich mahogany and leather-bound books, thinking about his black rage.
Maybe.
You think Millie writes a book?
You know what's so frustrating about him is he put out one of the coolest Air Force commercials I've ever seen. Remember, it was a recruiting commercial. He put out. I'll send it to you guys afterwards. It's badass. It got me pumped up. He's like, it was great. It was truly an EO. I'm not when I'm up there flying, I'm not black, white, whatever. The enemy only sees a U.S. Air Force, aviator.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And it was like, that's cool. And then it comes out that he's all about quotas. And it's like, oh, okay. So you were just full of shit on that. That's great.
So speaking of some of the policies, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, what they need to do is, get Hegseth in there and either Carrilla or, Cavoli, whoever, and hire the director of Top Gun Maverick to start making recruitment commercials.
Heck yeah, man.
Because
the Army finally went back to that. The Army finally went back to that. I mean, it's, I think we talked about it, 3 or 4 episodes, or actually probably longer than that. About 6 months ago, I saw an Army commercial. I'm like, It was a paratrooper commercial. I'm like, holy cow, man, this is what I remember growing up, not all this other crap. But so looking forward, it looks like a lot of the Israel, Gaza, Palestinian thing may just work itself out because looks like Israel's been given some free reign to just kind of do what they need to do, and it's just going to happen. What do you see as the path forward with Ukraine and Russia? Like, what does that look like, Luke, over the next let's take it from now till January, the inauguration day, and then after that, does it change, or what do you see the off-road, if there is an off-road from there?
I definitely think there's an off-ramp. I'm loath to say what's going to happen over the next 60, 70 days until inauguration, because I don't know what kind of moves Putin's going to make. But if you look at, Cutter, right? Josh Cutter already said, hey, Hamas, you got to get out of here.
Love it.
Yeah. and that's very Reagan-esque, right?
Yes.
So I think that Putin wants an off-ramp. I really think he does. So I'll go ahead and say I don't think things change much. There might be a couple of offenses up to the north where Ukraine did the incursion around Kursk. I think they may try to push them back there, along with North Korean special operations, by the way. Good Lord. They may try something like that to, stabilize that area. But I don't think the Russians try to push down to Odessa. They may feint like they're going to try. But back to Putin wanting an off-ramp, based on what Trump was saying, I believe, in the Joe Rogan podcast, which is awesome, by the way. I'm so glad that the media is dead, going back to what we said last week, the corporate media. I think Trump realizes, I think anyone with a brain realizes that the territorial gains that Russia has made to this point probably need to stabilize. They don't need to go any further. In fact, maybe they could back off maybe 40 kilometers, and that's just going to be, okay, we're backing off and we're going to stabilize this. And that's just going to be the peace deal, Zelensky. And you're just going to have to take it. And this is going to be territory that's going to look a lot like Kosovo, right? It's just, that's what it's going to be. I think Zelensky, that's another landmine that everyone's going to be like, I told you Trump's a Putin, stooge and all this stuff. I really do think there's going to be an off-ramp. Everybody's saying within the first 6 months. I don't know, maybe, but it definitely behooves everyone to stop this nonsense, because it truly is nonsense. There's so many people being killed. I mean, it's going to set Ukraine back a quarter of a century just because of all the military age males they've lost. Russia can take it. They always have, but this is just devastating, mainly for Ukraine. So yeah, I think that that's going to be an off-ramp there. What do you think, Josh? Think I'm all messed up?
No, I think the biggest, I think you're spot on. I think the biggest thing is it comes down to this. Okay. So you have two options. You give Ukraine weapons, you continue supplying them with tanks and, guns and bombs and lions and tigers and bears on by for them to keep fighting Russia. But like you said, at what point Ukraine has intentionally avoided pulling its 18-year-old to 22-year-old males. Why? Because like you said, dude, Europeans have dealt with this before. They do not want to send their very young men off to fight and die in wars. They don't want to do it, right? Because, the whole longevity thing. So really, when you look at it, how many conscripts and how many men does Ukraine have? Because they're going to have to start pulling in a few minutes. They're going to have to start pulling pretty soon. So at that point, your only other option is put U.S. troops on the ground. So there you have it. For all those people who, are let's get behind, let's help Ukraine. Okay, well, you there's only two ways. You either give them what they need, but you can't give them men. And there is a finite amount of that. Like you said, Russia doesn't have that problem. Russia's got plenty of men, right? And they'll just start snatching people off the streets if they have to. Or you send U.S. troops to Ukraine. You pick. Which option do you want? Ukraine is going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to make that decision very soon. Is you want to send another? How many have they lost so far? Can anybody look that up real quick? How many they lost so far, and how many And how much territory have you gained? What's the return on investment of that? Right? You want to, fight for another year, you got to fight for another 2 years and lose another however many tens of thousands. That's your choice.
So what do you think, Josh? Do you think like there going to be another Minsk agreement where, okay, those areas are
Yeah.
still Ukraine, or do you think they actually are forced to give up that area?
I don't think they'll agree to quote unquote give up that area. I think, I think eventually it's going to just get settled out. So 2 parts. So I think a Minsk type agreement for the Donbas, but I think it may get to a point to where they may just go ahead and capitulate 100% on Crimea, because they're never going to get Crimea back.
Yeah, Crimea.
No,
gone.
never.
They're never getting that back. Ever.
I think Donbass is gone too. Honestly,
I think it is
Probably.
too, but I think they would be willing to make that agreement. Like, hey, that's still Ukraine, but you're there, and we're going to stop fighting right now, right?
So-
they'll put a pin in it, but the Crimea is gone.
To answer your question, and this is what really bothers me, is it's really hard to estimate the Ukrainian losses as well as the Russian. So this is like Afghan math, or Arab math, or whatever you want to say. Pentagon officials are reporting around 600,000 Russian casualties. I would say that's probably high. I'd probably say it's around 300, probably half that, right? And then they're citing Ukraine suffered tens of thousands of military casualties. I would multiply that up to probably 150, 200,000. I think it's been brutal for both. It's really hard to verify that stuff because Ukrainian losses are negative propaganda. We don't want to see Ukrainian losses. We want to see Russian losses. So everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. The big question, Roger, is, since we got some time left here, is what about China? What happens with China? I'm really looking forward to the China. I love that. China.
Unfortunately, because the way our political system works in the timeline, China just waits us out. I've heard a lot of pundits sit there and talk about, with North Korea and China and Russia, and everybody's having to recalculate. Now, Russia, I think, is having to truly recalculate a little bit because they've got a lot of tactical decisions to make. Obviously, going back to Ukraine, what we're talking about now. With China, I believe they probably just try to slow roll this thing for about 2.5, 3 years. Because best case scenario, Trump takes office. Okay, he was president before, so he can kind of hit the ground running. He's only going to have the House and the Senate for 2 years at best. The GOP probably ends up losing the House next term. Probably be more difficult to lose the Senate. I haven't looked at the map and as far as the breakdown of who's up, but probably lose the House next term. So you've got 2 years. Year after that, you go into election season, and then basically you're a lame duck president. And when you look at China and their long-term outlook on things, you just slow roll it. You slow roll it, expect some tariffs, that type of stuff. But, Trump's got his own issues with the economy that he's got to deal with. So tariffs and things like that do bring up a big issue. When you start talking about the cost of living and you talk about inflation and interest rates, those are a lot of mixed bags there. You pull one string one way and another string goes the other way. So long story short, I think China just kind of slow rolls it, man. I think the dialogue will be kind of like it was during Trump's first term. I don't think you see a whole lot of aggression, but a lot of their moves are strategic anyway. So they'll make these little gray moves or whatever underneath the radar. They'll continue pushing their Belt Road. They'll continue expanding. You'll start to see more and more influence as far as in Taiwan, that type of stuff. But they'll just kind of slow roll it, stay underneath the radar until you get 3 years in, and then go back to doing what you're doing. I don't think that you see any Chinese spy balloons flying over, or at least not in the way that they did during Biden's administration. And then we just let them fly over the United States. I don't think that happens. So, Josh, I don't know if you see that a little bit different, but, I don't know that China really has to recalculate. I think they just say, yeah, you know what, we just wait this out for a couple of years, because a couple of years is nothing to them as far as their planning goes.
No, I agree. The only thing that's coming into Z's calculus now is, okay, or are we going to get, tariffs? That's really it. But as far as their plan doesn't really change. They're going to continue. They're going to continue marching. You know, along with their plan. That's going to be that. You know, China has some issues, and we talk about this a lot. China has some internal issues. So if you pay attention, especially like we talk about all the time, their real estate, China's economy is not in good shape, and when they take a look at Taiwan, that's another that's kind of one of those things. Is are they going to take Taiwan militarily? I don't think so. I think they're just I think they're just going to continue to put leverage on Taiwan,
Yeah,
put
won't
leverage
have
on
to.
them. Yeah, they don't have to. They're going to take them politically. They don't. Xi Jinping does not want to be the dictator of the ashes, so to speak. So I don't think their plan changes. I think they continue. He continues on with what he's doing. Because at the end of the day, I think he realizes that Trump is going to have a hard time getting things done. Period. Just routine things, simply because the establishment is still in place. Xi Jinping is not that worried about what's going on. What Xi Jinping does have to worry about is dealing with Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio is a hawk when it comes to China. Man, he is an absolute hawk. And China actually expelled him into basically he's PNG.
Yeah.
Which they're going to have China, because they did that in what? I forget what year it was, 2022, 2020 or 2022, somewhere in there. They did it because, he proposed some, pro Taiwan legislation, and stuff. And China was like, yeah, you're persona non grata. We're not going to ever, we're not going to talk to you. So they're going to have to deal with that. Rubio is not going to be well received in China, which, makes his stock go up a little bit in my mind. But yeah, they're gonna have to worry about Rubio, not necessarily DJT. We'll see how it shakes out, but I don't think they change their plan really much, if at all.
Yeah, they said he was sanctioned twice by Beijing in 2020 and may still be banned from entering China.
My man.
I love it. So what do you think, Luke? What do you think happens with China? Anything different than what we said?
I think they back off a little bit. I really do. While slow rolling it, their eye is always, a quarter of a century. But their third plenary, by the way, not too long ago. Do y'all know about the third plenary? What that is in China? You should. If you're going to teach an Indo-PACOM class, you probably should. So basically the third plenary happens every 5 years, and they set out the vision, like the 5-year plan, right? And it's a lot of times it's been a big deal. Like what was it, 10 or 15 years ago, they in the third plenary they laid out the plan for the Belt Road Initiative. Okay, that was a big deal. Well, the third plenary this time, everybody's kind of freaking out about it because it's supposed to be this big unveiling, like this is where we are, it's going to be great. The third plenary this time, nothing was said. And everybody's just like, they came out and said a lot of words, but it didn't mean anything. There was no line. There was no way forward, no nothing. It's just like, well, we're going to continue to do what we do, which was actually not a good sign, which means we've been talking since day one of this podcast that China's economy is not in a good spot at all. They're trying to dig their way out of a pretty substantial residential and commercial real estate bubble that could be popped at any moment. It's being propped up by, I don't know, printing yuan or whatever. I don't know. So since nothing was said in the third plenary, they're definitely not in great shape. They are still growing their military. They've been fairly aggressive on Taiwan. I think they might back off a little bit. I haven't seen, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I haven't seen anything come out of China congratulating Trump. I'm sure maybe diplomatically something has come out, but I haven't seen any moves with China so far, like you've seen with Qatar and the Middle East and some other countries as well. So I think they're going to back off a little bit. I think they're watching very closely. I think they're watching the cabinet picks very closely. That's hilarious about Rubio. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot. And I just want to say right now, I'm trying not to be negative. I'm trying just to revel in the winning right now. I like what I'm seeing for the most part. I don't like the Matt Gaetzes so much. I'm not sure about some of these picks. but I'm just trying to be happy for just at least a little while, instead of just trying to see the dark and everything, which was what the three of us usually do. I'm just trying to take it all in because we haven't won this much in a very long time. In such a short amount of time, we haven't won like this. It's a good
And
feeling.
I don't think I don't think this red wave was expected, right? I mean, everybody kind of, or you say whether you expect Trump to win or not, but when you look at the follow-on with the Senate and the House, all the attention was on Donald Trump and not the House and the Senate races. Now the House has been close, and fortunately they were able to pull it off. But again, depending on the Senate map and the election, the Senate could be in place there for a couple of terms at least. It's hard to flip 3 seats, and again, a lot of that just breaks down to who's up for re-election or whatever. So we'd have to take a hard look at that maybe next episode. But if you've got 53 seats, 54 seats, 3 or whatever it is ends up being, it's 1 or 2 seats okay. 3 seats, very, very hard to flip.
Yep. Now Josh is going to rain on our parade.
Nope. Not at all.
I don't like Thune. What you were saying about Thune earlier, it's like, yeah, that's not. That's dark cloud.
Yeah, and I think, and going back to the Rubio thing, I think Rubio, one, that was a favor to him, because Rubio is not, he's definitely not a Trump Republican, but he's one step away from being an establishment guy. But that might also been a concession to the Senate, right, as a whole. Like, hey, I'm gonna get one of your guys that generally everybody kind of likes Rubio for the most part. He's not a Cruz or somebody who even his own party kind of hates him type guy. So I think it might have been a concession for the Senate as well. But we'll see. I think they're going to get their first, obviously shortly after January 20th, they're going to get their first test and, really going to see, okay, does have the majority in the House and Senate? Does it really mean anything or not? Because once these things start going through, you're going to see, like Roger said, you're going to see people's true colors come out, and you're going to see whether Trump's going to have, 24 months of being able to get things done, or if it's just going to be an uphill slog, every step of the way, like it was in his first term. Because, said it last episode, I believe, is he has 24 months to get things done. And that's less than that if you count all the vacations that the Senate goes on. You've got a little less than 24 months to get things done before the midterms, and you're going to lose one of the chambers in the midterms. That's kind of just normally what happens. That's a natural ebb and flow. But you got to get busy and get to work. And, again, the way people showed up to vote for Trump, last week, you have to show up and vote like that in the midterms as well. And you need to identify all these people who, are not supportive of your policies and your ideas. And people have to get up off the couch and go vote in the same numbers that they voted in last week to get rid of the Thunes, to get rid of, the Dan Crenshaws and stuff like that. You could do it. You just got to show up. So
where's Crenshaw been at lately? Like, I haven't heard his name other than us, and haven't seen him in a couple months.
He's been out hanging out with Meghan McCain
And Liz Cheney.
Yeah.
And Adam Kinzinger. God, what a bitch. Can't stand that dude. Well, shout outs. I don't know. Usual suspects. Appreciate y'all listening. We're on a schedule. We recorded one this week. We recorded one last week. Man, we're on a roll. It's episode 169. We're doing all right. Only 31 to go before January 1st. I think we can do it. I'll take my stuff with me next week. I'll be on the road next week, but I'll take my stuff. Appreciate y'all listening. If you got any comments for us, throw them in the YouTube chat, or hit our Facebook page or Twitter or whatever. We always love hearing from you guys. And I guess, I don't know, unless you guys got any shout outs, any specific shout outs, nothing. Oh, well, Josh and Roger, they hate the listeners. So until next time, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured. Wu-Tang.